Picking up bouquet and clay. Picking up bouquet and clay. Picking up bouquet and clay. Picking up bouquet and clay.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is your girl, Kay Marie. Thank you for kicking it with me today. And I have a very special guest today, a longtime friend of mine. He is an educator. He's been pretty much teaching most of his adult life. And he is a teacher now in the Baltimore schools. So we're going to go ahead and welcome our guest. Jesse Harrington. Hey, Jesse.
Hey. Well, actually, I don't teach in Baltimore anymore. I teach
there you go.
like a suburb of Baltimore. So, like, it's totally different. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, right.
It's totally different.
Yeah, it is a suburb, excuse me, of Baltimore.
Yeah.
Not the inner city, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started off there, and I mean, it was a great experience. I really, I connected with kids, but things didn't work out. It was some of that, stuff we see today, that institutional racism stuff, and it was kind of weird because you like working in the inner city, and you kind of not wanting to be the person with the power didn't want you to be there because of who you are, but just as luck turned out, I wound up applying at a district where I became like I'm one of 6 black men out of 2,000 black teachers there. So
2,000?
Yeah, so it's complete opposite of what my experience, of life for meeting people. It's a great experience though.
So what's the one, and I ain't trying to clown Baltimore, but was it more like East Side had Lean on Me or something like that?
Oh my gosh. The school was it was a charter school, because in Baltimore City most of the schools are a charter school now. Meaning that they have some private organization funding the school.
Mm-hmm.
It was a school, it was located in East Baltimore. School was in their second year, and most of his hires were new teachers, new yuppie white teachers.
Okay.
And it was a white guy who had a military background, and the kids were rough, but they weren't rough. They were kids, and so they were kids that were very smart. They were kids who had a rough edge, but they were kids, and so if you see them for who they were, they didn't need somebody to come in. And who I wasn't the person to come in who but I was the kind of person that'll listen to you, get to know you, and value you as a person. And I think, to me, that'll be one of the key things I'll talk about today, is that idea of valuing people as people, because that's truly how I try to frame my teaching and how I approach education. And so it was just that he saw, back to that institutional structure, he saw me coming in as a black man, tall, big African American man. He wanted me to be his extra security, I put his kids in the line, whatever. But he didn't really realize the true impact that I was having on those kids. I turned one of the roughest. First thing you always do, you try to find the roughest kids, and you make them you win them over.
Yeah.
I had one of the roughest kids, little black kid, rough home life, but he invited me to come to his football game. So Jessica and I drove down to Virginia to see him play football, and he seen me there, and he just blew his whole mind, because I drove an hour and a half to his game.
Yeah, I know that made his day.
Oh my gosh! So the next day, any kid who say something to me, he'd be like, "Hey man, don't mess with Harrington. Be quiet." And so I had the roughest boy on my side. And then in the same time, it was a little girl in the class who all the teachers looked at her as a little fast little girl. But I looked at her like, she's just a kid who just don't know need help. So I would sit down in class with her and work with her one-on-one, helping her with her reading and stuff. And she used to call me father. And I'm like, what the heck is a father? It's a father. But, she was in, so from that point on, she never let another kid disrespect me or say anything wrong to me in class. So at that point, I had the roughest girl and the roughest boy in the class who everybody was scared of on my side. Just by showing them love.
Yeah.
And so I think I always thought that was one thing that kind of intimidated the principal, that he was kind of, I don't like, can't, kids being close to the black guy. Even there, I was the only black teacher, I wasn't the only black male teacher because we had some gym teachers, but I was the only black academic male teacher there.
Okay.
So.
Wow. So growing up, did you have any male teachers that made you want to get into teaching, or was teaching always a passion of yours ever since you were small? How did that come about?
Oh my gosh. So I grew up not far from where you grew up, but I grew up in Southwest Detroit in a small town called River Rouge. I don't know, a lot of people haven't heard of it, but it's that River Rouge, Ecourt, Southwest Detroit. In our neighborhood, when we grew up, this is in the 80s and the 90s, was one of the most it was very segregated. It was segregated by railroad tracks. Blacks lived on one side, whites lived on the other side. So unfortunately, not unfortunately, it was a great thing because I grew up on the black side of town, and we had 2 elementary schools that went K through 7th. In high school, we went 8th grade. High school went from Rouge ran back then from 8 to 12. Okay. And so in elementary school, I had most of my teachers were African American teachers. We had 3 to 4 male teachers, but it was one teacher in particular that he actually put a fire under me to truly is the reason why I like history. I think back then we went out. The school I went to was called Walter White Elementary School. And it wasn't named after the character from Breaking Bad. I was like,
right. Heisenberg. Wow.
Yeah. I was like, I go to Heisenberg school. But no, it wasn't that. And so Mr. Booker was the teacher back then. And he always reminded me of Martin Luther King, mixed in with a Malcolm X with that stern, but what he did all the time, for us as kids, he always instilled in us a pride of being who we were. Because he taught us, there we learned Black history and things like that. But going to Walter White Elementary, this almost goes back to one of the big debates in Detroit that's being led by one of my friends, the importance of a name of a school. I went to Walter White Elementary School, and Mr. Booker, in teaching Black American history to us at a young age, I learned who Walter White was. And so I went, because we had posters and stuff. I was like, oh man, that's the school I go to. And I learned at a young age that Walter White was one of the head of the NAACP, the second president of the NAACP. And so I grew up with a pride in the school I went to. So African American kids went to schools that had that were named after African Americans. So it kind of, you cared about your school, you had that pride. So just always at a young age, I always cared about learning about history. I was like one of the kids in the class who would stand up in high school and say, I used to recite that BDP song, be like, why aren't we learning about African history? Why are we learning about all these? And the white kids in my class would be like, oh, sit down. And so my friend would be hyping me up. And then I was talking to my mom the other day, and she started talking about, she was like, hey, remember when you was in high school and you had me type your paper? And I'm like, huh? She was like, yeah, I learned a lot about the Ku Klux Klan by writing your paper. I was like, oh my gosh, I forget I wrote a paper about the Klan when I was in high school.
Wow.
But so studying history is always, it's just been something I enjoy. And so I never was like, oh, I want to be a teacher, but it was I always enjoyed history. I enjoyed learning about the past and trying to figure out how does the past connect to our story of today.
So what type of history? All of it, or how we have world history, and see, I loved American history. I got straight A's out that class. But so what type of history? Is it just everything as a whole, or is it a certain?
So so for me, my favorite course, the favorite thing in history is always, for everybody, it's always American history, because it's where we can connect to. Yeah. Because we're Americans, and so it helps us understand the story of who we are. I love that. I currently teach 6th grade. So I know a lot about world history, which covers Well, I deal with early civilizations like in
Mhm.
Egypt, Rome, Greece,
Yeah.
India, China, things like that. And it's very intriguing to learn about it. But when it's for my personal studies, I love African American history. I love reading. Some of the best classes I had in college were African history classes. I mean, it all intrigues me. It all intrigues me. I love the story of us and
Yeah.
understand how did we become who we are.
You know what? When I went to a parochial school after I moved back to Detroit from San Diego. I went to St. Cecilia.
Mm,
And I will never forget, I had our seventh grade teacher, Miss Richardson. She made sure we knew our African American history. She was the
mm,
only teacher. I mean, she was like pro. She had dreadlocks, wearing the kente cloths, and that's when I first saw Roots. We watched Roots for a whole week,
mhm,
and just learn. That's why I really learned about American history, African American history. Actually, it's like the first time in seventh grade.
mhm,
Not just what they put in the little book, the
mhm.
main
A little
people like
blurb.
George Washington Carver's and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Martin
yeah.
Luther King's, but much more than that. So do you teach? Do you sneak that in or whatever? And when you teach your sixth grade students?
It's so hard because I teach ancient world history. Probably
Mm,
one subject, the area that I'm able to interweave things in is when I do teach Egypt, I make sure I talk about the kingdom of Kush, the African kingdom that really overtook Egypt and they came and conquered, and just seeing that, because I try not to isolate Egypt to try to tell people that a lot of people try to remove Egypt from being Africa, but it's Africa.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so, but when we talk about Kush, which came these people that came up from the southern African, I mean from south of Egypt, and they conquered Egypt and instituted a lot of African customs in there, and they melted the two customs of those two regions. So I try to cover it in there, but a lot of times it's so hard teaching it where I mean interweaving it into what I
mhm.
do. But what I try to do is try to make sure that where I teach now that my presence speaks for us as a people.
Okay.
I say that to say, again, I teach in a place where I'm one of six black teachers in there. So our kids have very little chance to have to see a African American in an educational role. And
And
so,
and where you teach now, they're all is predominantly white, correct?
yes,
Okay.
correct, correct. Um, And so what I try to show them, I say this to say that to me, I look at it being there saying that for them to see me, they're now seeing another image of a black man. And
Mhm,
so to them, so what I try to do is show them that what you see on TV is not us. But
mhm.
when you think of a black man, you think of something that go on in society, think of Mr. Harrington, and it kind of get me so that they can gain a piece of empathy for somebody outside of them. Because I mean, it's totally where I work at is totally different than like where I grew up at. I mean,
How
all,
so?
they're ultra conservative, farmland. Again, but they're good people because I realize they're people,
Mhm,
and so I've learned to you remove some of the um, stereotypes or misconceptions that we may have about people and look at people as people. I've met some great kids over the time I've been up there. Kids who, when I walk into buildings, teachers. So I mean, I often do work with the high school students that I used to have. I go up there and check on them. And so
okay.
when I walk into the high school, kids will run from everywhere. Mr. Harry, and teachers up there looking like, and who is he? Because I cared. I showed these kids a little something different. And so people like, how do you do it? I just treat people like people and see them beyond, you know, race, ethnicity,
Yeah.
political ideology, and all those things.
Yeah, because that's, when you care and when a child they can see who actually is for them and who really cares about them. Because you see some teachers, they just there for a paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's really sad. But when it's the ones like you that come across that really cares, I mean, and I know it's a lot of them versus the ones that just there for a paycheck. But when they see that, they can remember that for the rest of their life. And it's good that you are showing them that not all Black people or not all Black men are like the images you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good that they're having that type of interaction with you with a Black male.
One of the um one quick story. So at a time a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, our guidance counselor, no, it was 16 because it was the dreaded 16. And so our guidance counselor was had one of the African. We had because we always get African American kids there.
Okay.
So one of the boys was in our office, and she's sitting there, and he was like, "I'm tired of living up to these images. I don't know what people want. If they want me to look at me a thug, I'm just gonna be that. What should I do?" And so she sat in her office, and she was like, she called me in the middle of my class, was like, "I don't know what to do. What can you do?" She was like, "I feel like just coming to get you so you can come talk to him." And I said, "Okay." And so what she said, she decided that day, because we had a group of 5 or 6 Black kids, who Black boys who needed trying to figure out how to navigate the system because they just didn't fit in. And so she decided, she said she wanted to form a support group for African American students. And so she asked me and my other coworker, because I do work with an African American woman, and I mean that's probably one of the main reasons I'm able to survive there, or we're able to do some of the things and thrive there, is because I do have somebody else in the building who I can bounce things off of,
Yeah.
things off of me. And so the three of us, it's this little Jewish lady. She ain't old. I mean, a Jewish woman and 2 African American woman and a Black male. And we decided we had this start this support group with these kids, and we met with them. I talked about how to navigate the system, how to handle your anger, things. And they were able to talk about some of their frustrations, and we try to give tools to how to survive in this world. These kids were 8th graders getting ready to go to high school, and so we had a meeting with the parents. And the parents, and so 2 people from the high school came in, and they heard our presentation. And so the media specialist up there said, "I want to duplicate what you guys are doing at our school." And so she took what we started there to the high school, and so she started a Black student union with the kids, which led with her. She led her and her other equity coach. Teacher liaison, a great guy. They started working with these students with the Black Student Organization, where these kids were able to have a voice and try to feel they can build something. And then that led to the Hispanic students, to the Gay Student Alliance, and then to the Allies. And so she was able to develop all these different support groups for kids at the high school where they can. And so right now, that same group that she started 4 years ago is now being duplicated at all the high schools in our district.
Oh, and wow.
To me, I just counted it a blessing just to be a part of something to help them in the way that they need. So whenever she calls me, say, "Hey, can you come talk to," because there's one kid in particular I've been working with him since even in 6th grade. He's a 12th grader this year. And so she's like, "Can you come talk to?" And so I'm shooting up there on my first chance to get up there. And so, I don't know. I just think that's the biggest impact I think I try to have on these kids.
That's what's up. It's creating a program that can be beneficial to not just a particular race of kids, but for all of them, and to go and have a safe haven. That's good. That's what's up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like I was telling you offline, I want to talk about Also,
Get a little comfortable. I got my black genius shirt on.
I see. Talk about what 45 and Betsy, what's her name? DeVos.
I try not to remember her.
Right. That's why it is. Yeah. But her, they want pretty much everybody to go back to school in the classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
and she no social distancing and no virtual or no part-time. So they just want to throw everybody up in the classroom. So how do you feel about that? And I know a lot of parents are not happy about that. And I know probably a lot of teachers are not either. So what do you feel about that? And what are your conversations like with some of your teacher friends?
I just the whole the problem that's happening at the top is that the voices of the teachers aren't being heard.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand her frustration, and I can understand frustrations of parents whose children experience the abrupt disruption of learning, because many teachers in school districts it was thrown at us, and it was something we just had to do. And so we bust. I know I spent hours upon hours, and many of my coworkers and colleagues and people across the country spent hours upon hours trying to deliver instruction as best as we could with limited. We just really didn't have the resources, nor did we have the ability, but we did the best we could. And so what they don't realize is that the work we put in then, if we translate it to the fall, it'll be 100% better. And so if we're able to put the accountability in on students, and we're able to just make sure all students have access to those things. I know I always hear the conversation about access. Inner city kids don't have computers.
Mm-hmm.
We can get it to them. But here's an issue where I work at that we dealt with that's different than, that people really don't, leave out the conversation. The people out where I work at, many of them they can afford computers.
Yeah.
If not, our schools can give them. But the problem is I work in a rural area where they don't have internet services. And so that's another thing that needs to be brought to the table. If we're going to provide, the federal government should give money to make sure that those places are fully wired, or we can have hotspots in those areas.
Right.
Listening to Betsy DeVos, I have never been a fan of hers before. When I first heard of her, probably about 10, 15 years ago, I went to school on the western side of the state. I knew about the DeVos's, and I heard about her push for, school of choice and privatization of schools. And to me, when I listened to her yesterday on CNN, MSNBC, every news outlet that showed her, even Chris Matthews got her. It was truly disheartening to hear her everybody asking her repeatedly, but what is the federal government's response? What are you guys going to do? How are you going to help these teachers? Her only response was, kids need to go back to school. That's no response from a leader. That is absolutely no response. What she should have said is, we're going to try to aid these districts in any way possible to make it possible, because there's no way. She's not talking about sending money. All she's saying is, you need to plan to go back to school. She's not listening to teacher unions. She's not listening to the voice of school districts. She's not listening to parents when they call in. All she sees is that kids need to go back to school.
Oh, she just repeating what her boss is telling her to repeat.
Exactly. And the root of it, and they both have motives.
Yeah.
His root is that he knows that if these parents, the economy is being hurt because parents aren't going to work. Part of parents being able to go to work is their children not have to have daycare, which is, we understand. We all want the economy stimulated. We all want people to work, but we cannot risk the health of our kids.
No.
And even hearing the studies where they're saying children don't pass on the virus, what are we using to judge. We shut down schools on March 13th. There was never a hotbed of kids congregating for 7 hours together where we can prove that the virus isn't passed on in our schools.
You know, I find it kind of interesting that, you know, we would shut down in dining restaurants and stuff like that, but you want kids to go to school for like 7-8 hours. You know, where the in dining, you're only there for, let's say, about, you know, an hour. So, you know, like you said, their motives are not good.
And with divorce, I'm really listening to what she's, because if you listen, you will hear, you listen to what she's not saying, or you listen to hear what she's saying. Her true motive, knowing who she is, she's been someone who has been pushing for school of choice, voucher systems. What is her goal is that we send these kids back, or we say schools open up. Your school doesn't open up. You know what you should do? Send your kid to one of our schools that open up. Your kid's money should be able to go from that public school to my private school that opened up, or to my charter school that opened up. And then who loses out? The public school. So her whole means is trying to destroy. She's not doing this because she cares about the kids' education, but it's a greater cause.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just hoping November rolls around and we don't have to deal with.
Come on now.
We get my girl Elizabeth Warren in as Secretary of Education, or somebody like that. You know. How do you put somebody in that position who has zero education?
That's the whole administration, though. Ben Carson. What do you know about HUD? What do you know about that?
Put him as attorney. Put him now. If you would have told
me Surgeon General,
I would have been like, "Wow, that's a good choice."
Right? I can't.
That's a great choice. But Betsy DeVos was probably upset me the most, just because being from Michigan, and knowing what she has done or tried to do on the western side of the state for years, and seeing that becoming the head of DC for that position, I was outdone.
Yeah. So what is your take on, I know you mentioned it previously, but I just want you to get more into it. What is your take about charter schools and this whole voucher system thingy?
I'm not a big fan of the charter school movement, but I think the saddest part is we so entrenched in it that it's hard to go back. We grew up in a time where local schools were, you went to your local school and neighborhood schools. To me, neighborhood schools, the ideal thing that we should have did was bring equity to our neighborhood schools. And because people move where there are good schools. If you got a good school, you'll get more people there. So why not build the schools so that the community can develop? The Kalamazoo School District, over probably about 15 years ago, saw that it was like all the rich people in that area came up with this idea to develop the Kalamazoo Promise. That program, if you graduated from Kalamazoo Public Schools, you will be guaranteed a free scholarship to college. And it teetered off of about how many years you've been there. And if you went to certain schools, you were offered, they even paid for room and board. So you can get a free college education just by going to school there. From the last thing I heard, that much of the population in Kalamazoo started increasing, the tax base increased. But, come on, if you give people an incentive to stay there, your schools become better. I'm like, so if you invest in the future, everything else improves. Don't just throw it off on somebody else to do something for you.
Right.
And my personal problem with charter schools is that it's that idea of selectivity, meaning that they can pick and choose which kids can come off their laundry list of requirements or whatever. And so they don't have to. Of course, their numbers might be better when you look at testing or things than some public schools, because we teach whatever kid walks in our door. I teach kids sometimes who come in 6th grade who below reading level, and so I treat them just as I treat any other kid, and just try to help them move, just progressively move higher. And they should have the same criteria, or not be judged as high.
That's true. What about the whole No Child Left Behind?
Oh,
I know, because you know what? Because I work at a at a place where there's a lot of kids. So I was talking to one of my coworkers, and because she's a therapist, and she was just, I never really understood the whole No Child Left Behind thing in this whole totality, but she was telling me that like they just pass the kid along, even though may not be ready for the next grade.
Well,
how was that helping the child?
I think she's talking about the idea of social promotion, probably, where kid pass it. To me, I think that if a kid's not meeting where they should be, maybe they should spend some extra time there. I mean,
yeah,
but that's not moving to be the way people look at it today. It's you might hurt they might be emotionally scarred being in a grade behind when they shouldn't. No Child Left Behind was this unfunded mandate that the government put on schools. If the schools don't meet these certain criteria, the schools can be shut down, staff can be fired, the whole staff, and retool till it meets the standard. Those kids start meeting the standards. But again, being an unfunded mandate, that means that no one's there's no federal funds coming into that school to help with bringing those kids up to par. So a lot of those schools, and that's why you see, especially in Detroit, why you saw that we had Detroit Community School District developed outside of, remember the one the state put in to compete with the Detroit public schools. But again, that same money could have been used to make a better education for those kids who are already there. No, I don't know. I just think that sometimes we set our kids up to fail.
Yes, I think so too. And it's like nobody's. It's like the children they're not even a factor in some of these decisions. It's sad. So tell me, what would happen if Jesse Harrington was over education of the United States? What would you do?
Oh my gosh, I get a new job title. I don't know. First thing I would do, I would sit down with. You mean if it's January, whatever day inauguration, somebody said Joe Biden. I mean, the new president, Joe Biden,
right.
said, "Hey, we want you to be the Secretary of Education."
Yeah.
First thing I would do, I would bring in heads of all the Secretary of Education from every state, and bring in the teacher unions, because they do have a voice, because they speak to the people. And we need to figure out, bring everybody to the table to figure out how can we bring our education to that to meet the needs of our 21st century learners. In lieu of the situations we're dealing with COVID-19, because I think what we have done as a society, we have not looked at this as a learning experience on how can we readjust and retool how we're doing things. I was listening to a sermon one day, and the preacher was talking about Stephen Furtick, and he was talking about how we always looking to go back to the way it was. Why can't we look forward to seeing what is our new? And so first thing we need to all come back and see what is our new going to be? What is our new normal? And how can we embrace where we are at and see how can we take this and get these kids equipped for the next generation, the new. Then because I'm a history guy, I'm not a big guy who's a promoter of STEM education. I do believe STEM education is important.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. But I think one thing that we're losing in our society are the humanities. We're losing the arts. We're losing the social studies. We're losing our thinkers, because these are the subjects throughout history have created our minds, our thinkers, our writers, our creative, and these are the people who lead the next generation. Not, I mean, it's great to have engineers, people that build and can lead and all that things, people to create things. But we do need if we remove our thinkers or our social studies or our lawyers and things like that, we're going to continue creating robots. One thing I always think about, when President Obama talked about STEM, I said, but President Obama, if we had got rid of STEM, we wouldn't have had you. He wasn't a science major. He was a political science, history, along that. We wouldn't have had thinkers. If we would have,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I would push work towards creating a bigger push towards bringing humanities to the front, and bring back, somebody once brought this to my attention or said something about bringing back civics to schools, because students learn about government, they learn about history, but they don't learn about, we have lost the study of civics, learning how government works, how to engage with government, how to teach students how to protest, how to teach students how to, if you don't see something that you agree, what should you do? How do you write a letter to your principal saying, Mr. and Mrs. John Doe, I don't agree with this and this policy. Here's this and this reason why we should try this and this. How do you write to your senator? I mean, we have to teach civil engagement to kids if we want to create a better future for our own, which we're seeing a lot with this, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and the students are protesting in the streets, but we have to teach them how to do it at an early age and how to do it right and what's the importance of it. I don't know.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Like you said, but and again, I STEM, like you said, STEM is important as well, especially for us to get into that, and Black women. But I'm more of a creative, so I hate that the arts is like the first thing to get cut from schools, and it shouldn't be, because a lot of us creatives may not be all of that academically. I mean, a lot of us are too, but we're more creative, so we learn a different way. And with that, I saw this great documentary on Netflix. It's on there now, with Zac Efron's Down to Earth.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
It's really good. Talking about like this climate change and it's different things, and I learned so much from that documentary. So I think he went to somewhere in South America. I forgot exactly where, but it was like this compound place. They're eating right and they're going to school. The kids there, but it's not traditional. Like their learning total is different. They don't have tests. They don't have homework. They're learning like life skills. So what do you think about teaching like that, especially like with these tests? Because not everybody, me myself, is not good at taking standardized tests, even though I know the knowledge, I have the knowledge, but when it comes to tests, I don't know what happened.
That is the funniest thing ever, because I'm like the greatest. To me, a test don't mean anything to me, because I think I always talk, me and my one friend, we always talk about this. I don't think it's a test I can probably take that I can't pass. I'm like, I think I can probably BS my way to pass any test. And but is it an accurate assessment of if I know the information? No. When I teach, one thing I try to do in everything I do is give multiple ways to assess if my students learn. The kids get tired of it, but what I do is, like, I might say, hey, draw a picture. hey, you can either write a summary. Hey, if you want, you can act it out. I had one, I mean, years ago, I had a girl, she graduated this year. And so we were talking about life in ancient Egypt. And she made this song about working in the fields in the Nile River, talking about, I mean, and so we're in class, like tears just dripping down our eyes. I mean, but she was able to express and show her understanding of this through song.
Yes.
And so it was, I mean, and so I think that we have to be willing to step out our own box and blow it up and let kids learn in the way that they can. I always told my one friend, he always tells his daughter about grades. And I said, grades don't mean anything. And he said, how you gonna say grades don't mean anything? You're a teacher. Like, grades don't mean anything to me. I'm like, if they want an A, they can have an A.
Yeah.
I mean, it don't mean anything. My thing is, I'm about the learning experience. To me, I teach 6th grade right now. If a kid walks out of my room and not remember anything about social studies, I'm okay. But if a kid could come back and say, I remember that lesson we did where you taught us about ancient China and you kicked us out the classroom, or but I remember how you taught us legalism. And I remember because they experienced history, they experienced learning. And so to me, education is about the experience. And so
I like that.
We have to incorporate many things that can help the students to engage with the experience of learning, the experience of just developing how to be critical thinkers and many of these things.
I like that. It is an experience, and you do connect more when you experience something, and you always hold on to that. You always have that memory of it. I like that. So, okay, we're going to talk about now, like at your current place of where you work. Do you experience any racism by you being just one of a few African Americans that's there?
So I'll say this. I have been there long enough where my name speaks volumes in the community, and I've done things to show that who I am is beyond anything anybody else can say. Personally, to me, I've never had the worst thing. I had a parent when I first started who didn't agree with something, and she leapfrogged me and called central office instead of calling my principal about something. And to me, that hurt. I would say it was racism, but I would say it was rather ignorant, parent. And so I moved past it. But for the most part, the parents of the community, they have embraced me. But I think it became because I won their kids over. So like I can imagine many of the kids go home sitting at the dinner table like, hey, Mr. Harrington is such and such. I do a lot to ensure who I am. From kids, a kid invite me to a football game. On Saturdays, me and my coworker will be at football games. One year, instead of the boys inviting me to football games, the cheerleading girls invited me to. And so I'm at their football. I'm at their football games. Then they're like, the same girls, can you come to our basketball games? I'm at their basketball games, sitting in the stands on my computer, like, go. And then, talk to their parents. And then, and then I'm at lacrosse. I'm going to lacrosse. They're like, can you come to our lacrosse game? I'm going to lacrosse. I'm going to see baseball. I'm at seeing girls dance. I got invited to a dance recital. Like, I swear, and it was long. And I'm like, girl, you better be happy I like you. I'm here, you could imagine like I'm the only black man in this big
Right.
but parents, to this day still say, hey, remember we got a D&J recital, you remember, you should come check it out. I'm like, oh man, yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
But I invested into kids so that people can see me as who I am rather than letting racism, or prejudice things, because
Yeah.
they don't have no power. I'm not really.
Yeah.
There's been parents who've made Facebook posts and trying to call me out over the past couple of weeks, and
What?
but the kicker was, with that being said, the person who stood up for me was a parent, because they know who I am, and I'm just like, I don't care, because
because a lot of times, you don't have to fight your own battles, because when you're a genuine person, other people will step up on your behalf.
Yep, because like I said, I can be my name speaks volumes, and if you have a problem with it, come talk to me, and we can have a discussion. But the craziest the looks that I've seen on father's face when they see who their child favorite teacher is, and they're like, oh, they had this look, they're like, oh, that's Mr. Harrington, but
right.
And I think part of it is that they were intrigued. They never know, and then they meet him and they're like, oh wow, he's pretty good. Like one of my favorite students of all time, couple of my favorite students of all time, they would eat lunch in my classroom. I listen to all their issues. It's like they're in high school now, but I'm constantly checking on their parents. I sit there and talk to their parents and stuff, but because they know that I really care about the kids, and the kids care about me. So,
do you do anything outside of the classroom? Like, I know offline we was talking about how you, over the years, you mentored people. So do you still do that? Do you still have time to do that, or are you working on any projects outside the classroom?
As far as with school, the only thing I do, I try to work with, I make sure, with kids, I do a lot of, just making that connection with, tennis sporting events. I do have students that I'm constantly still checking on. I tell them the connection don't end when you leave. So I'm still mentoring them from a distance, from high school, from here. Just trying to, I work with, trying to do some equity work within our district, like helping out with some of those things at our local high school, the high school that I'm connected with, and anything that the equity department in the school district might need. I try to help with them. Just trying to make sure that our kids have a voice. I tell kids every time I meet them, if you have any issues, I'm willing to. I'll go to bat for you, because I'm like, I don't have anything to lose.
Right.
So, hey, somebody bothering you, you feeling racism or something, tell them, come tell me. I'll make sure it get to the right channels.
Yeah. So by you already saying, you love history, you are a history buff, and I know that to be true, because I know, we're friends on Facebook as well, and you do you love your history. So picture this scenario: you and Jessica, you guys are like, have a nice little date. You're in the park, you have a nice little picnic spread, and you look over to your right, and it's your favorite person from history, from times past. Who is that person, and what would the conversation be like?
Oh my gosh. That's a deep one. Oh gosh. Oh gosh, it's so deep.
I know.
I have to go with Can I pick two? I'll go in two eras. Can I pick two?
Sure, pick two.
All right. So if we're gonna go in the more recently, I would love to always. One of the dreams would always be to sit down and talk with Martin Luther King. And really what I would want to know is how do we move forward? And because part of his last part of before he was brutally murdered was a transition from fighting for civil rights to workers' rights and trying to look and see moving the struggle to the next generation. The next step. And the problem is that we never moved with that. And so that's why we're still fighting for the worker man and still looking for those same issues. And I would just love to ask him, how do you move? What are we doing wrong, and how can we move this to the next level? One of my favorite people in history, American history, is thinking about the Underground Railroad, thinking about slavery and everything, is John Brown. And I would just really want to understand, like, hey man, you white. Why you cared so much about these black folks you was trying to take apart free of all? Like, just like, because he didn't have a vested interest in it. He could actually have been white and lived a white life.
Yeah.
What made you want to to take up arms and free, and fight for freedom for these people? Whereas you could have just went along in Missouri and continued preaching and everything. What did God tell you?
Right.
So
help them out. That's what he said.
Yeah. Like, come on, that's what I'm looking forward to seeing this. Because that's what I've been saying for years. I would love to see somebody make a real good movie about John Brown. And so I'm interested to see Showtime has a special coming on. A movie. Well, it's like a mini series on John Brown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Crud. Who is playing him? It comes on like in August.
Okay.
So.
Oh wow! Look at that. You got your wish.
Yeah. It would be somebody very interesting to learn more about.
That's true.
I don't know. But I could go up to obscure people, but I don't know. Like, I would love, I don't know. I would love to meet some philosophers, like, oh gosh, if Confucius was there, just to sit there and talk to him about some of his philosophies and how, I don't know. You about to have me in Dream World, like.
Look, that's your homework for tonight. No,
I know, you gonna have me like, oh gosh, who else?
So what would be your dream job? I know you love going to the African American Smithsonian.
Oh my gosh. Hey, I got a story to tell you about that. So
okay.
When the Smithsonian first opened, my coworker, I do at my school, we there's a thing called National History Day. It's where students from across the world, across the country, create these history projects. And so they're doing them locally, and then it go to the state level, and then it can go to the national contest, which is at the University of Maryland. And so one year, my coworker's son decided he wanted to do. I kind of talked him into him, nudged him into doing it, and he was kind of excited. He was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." And so he did. He was working on a project on the Black Panthers, and so I noticed that the Smithsonian was doing, the National Museum of African American History and Culture was doing workshops. And so my coworker, her husband, me, and her son all drove down there. Like we were like, oh, it was like a family field trip.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm part of this family. I like this. Like, they're great people. And so we so part of it, they had to go to the if you've ever been in a museum, it starts off, it takes you on a journey of the story of Africans in America. So it starts off from 1619 to the slave ships coming to America and to the Americas, that North and South America, and it ventures up into today. And so as I say, why I'm saying the Americas, because it's going to lead into what we're talking about. So we were there before the museum actually opened, and Jay goes off. Her son's name is so his name is Jalen. He goes off and he's doing this scavenger hunt in the museum. And so we're, as adults, we're just walking around. It is before the museum opens. And so I'm standing next to this exhibit, just watching it, because we're talking about, and it's talking about the slave trade in the Americas, meaning that it showed the transatlantic slave trade, how slaves went from Africa, North America, South America, and they were talking about, you know, populations of slaves that went everywhere. And so I was talking, and so I look up. It was a lady pushing. It was three women standing there. One lady's pushing the older lady in a wheelchair, and I look up. I'm like, that one lady, she looked familiar. I was like, that's the lady from Tasha, what's her name? Tasha, the lady from Girlfriend. No, not Girlfriends, from the Tyler Perry movies. This is what I'm thinking in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? What's her name? Tasha, the one who's married to
I want to say Tasha Smith.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
So I was like, this Tasha Smith, and I was like, okay. In my head, I'm like, whatever. And so she's talking to another lady, and I look at her, and I'm like, not really paying attention to her. And so they're like, wow, I didn't know the slave trade went like this. Not so. Me being who I am, I said yes. I said one thing that they don't teach us in history in school, that the African slave trade went to South America, and a great deal of slaves were in Brazil. And so look at Brazilians, those dark Brazilians, they are our brothers and sisters. They're just like us. It just, you know, they're products of they're Africans, part of the slave trade. They was like, oh, thank you, we never knew that. And so I'm like, okay, see you guys later. I just go on, walk around, going on. And so we go back, we meet up with the tour group. And so the lady who's leading us, who took us down there, she was like, hey, did you guys see Angela Bassett down there? I was like, no, I wasn't paying attention. She was like, yeah, we just hoping nobody bothered them. She was like, she was with an older lady in Tasha Smith. I was like, oh man, I said,
oh wow,
I didn't even realize it.
Oh man, Angela Bassett.
That was up my alley. I was like, you got me on my flow. I'm like, I could talk about. And so every time I go there, I'm always pitching for a job. I'm like, hey, you know, I can tell everybody about this exhibit.
So they know your name by now?
I don't know, because they've been shut down for so long. But if we're talking about the point of retirement where I'm older and I could just sit there and chill, I would love to work in a museum. I worked in when I went back to Western to get my second degree, I worked at the Kalamazoo Museum up there, and it was just so fun just being able to explain exhibits to kids and just get them engaged and learning about the local history. And because I get very excited when I start talking about, like, as you can see, just seeing them just so engaged and just being able to ask questions. So I would love to be a docent at a museum or even at a historical site. Just, I don't know.
I can totally see you doing that.
Yeah, it would be so fun. One of my buddies I went to college with, he does historical tours in Detroit, and I just always idolize him. I'm just like, man, you're living a life. I just, just great.
Yeah, I can see you doing that. So before we wrap up, I know you know a lot about, and your passion too is African American history. So just tell us like something that we may not know, that they don't teach us in the history books, and that we'll be surprised to know. What is one thing that you can tell us?
I don't know. Give me a subject. Give me something, an area that you can talk about, and I'll probably, let me see what I can find from there.
Let's see. Look, now I'm on the spot.
You thinking of that when I got a quick one. So when we talk about, I mean, everybody saw the movie, I mean, or has been looking at Hamilton or been paying attention to the play Hamilton, whatever. And we always hear about how you hear about Hamilton's friends, Lafayette, Lawrence, and you hear about Hercules Mulligan. Hercules Mulligan talks about, they talk about how Hercules, in the play, they talk about Hercules Mulligan was a spy on the inside, but we don't realize that it wasn't Hercules Mulligan. I wish Lin-Manuel had put this in there. It wasn't that Hercules Mulligan had a spy on the inside, Hercules Mulligan had a spy on the inside, which was his black slave called Cato, who was really the one who was stealing much of the British information over. And I would have loved if he had added that to it. I mean, so yeah, we're interwoven into every part of history. It's just
we are. Okay, yeah, I can't think of nothing, but that was a good one. That was a good one.
Nothing, you don't have nothing on.
I don't. I really don't.
Also, I mean, I know one thing that people always get confused about. They think about the Underground. I was telling my mom about this the other day. We were talking about the Underground Railroad, and they always vision the Underground Railroad like, oh, we ran north to freedom. But I was like, running for freedom in the Underground Railroad was just running away from the being enslaved. So if you were in Florida, you ran into the swamps in Florida. If you were in South Carolina and Georgia, you ran into the swamps over there. And that's what we got. And there's groups of people that still live there. Those they call it the Geechee. And where they still have much of their African culture. And so, I mean, or you have, that's how a lot of blacks went into the West because they were running from slavery. So it's just a run.
Yeah, this is the run. Yeah. All right, Jesse. I really
enjoyed this.
See, that's why, I like to get people to talk about their passion. Because I know we're both introverts, but when you talk, right? So when we talk about something that we're passionate about, I mean, it's like we can just we're in our zone, and. Yeah, so I do thank you for taking time out and just to speaking with us and giving us some insight. And I really pray that you stay safe. Don't know, because you don't know what they're going to do in your school district, do you? Yeah,
still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, so just stay safe and just pray that everything would they put the kids and you all first. So thanks again, Jesse. And I really enjoyed your enthusiasm, your energy. And again, we learned some things. I know I learned some things, and that's what this is all about.
Oh, man. Thank you again, Kalani. I truly appreciate it. Look forward to seeing all the things that you guys are doing. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. And so, everyone, this has been yet another episode of Kicking It with K. Marie. And hopefully, you learned something from Jesse today and about just education and, just have a good conversation with your kids and see what they're learning. And because that's very pertinent. So thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you next week. I'm out. Bye.
Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay.